Hello everybody, my name is Luke Mar and this is HauteLeMode, and welcome to Fashion Feuds, a series that breaks down some of the fashion industry's biggest, smallest, most irrelevant, most ridiculous, most petty fights, feuds, fallouts, and sometimes, but not that often, forgives and forgets. And in this episode, an inaugural episode, we will be exploring a rather explosive row between two of 21st century Great Britain's most beloved and most tragic figures, Alexander McQueen and Amy Winehouse. The two powerhouses of British culture, both from London and tragically lost so early on in their lives, had a heated years-long argument resulting in a roasted gown, and I mean that literally. Firstly, let's look at our two combatants, starting with Alexander Lee McQueen. McQueen was born in London's East End in 1969 and grew up rather poor in a large working-class family. He first showed signs of being interested in fashion when he was rather young. But being a boy in a rather rough neighborhood in the 1970s and 1980s, he kept it to himself for quite some time. While looking for a job, his mother Joy saw an advert on the television about London's famous Savile Row tailors needing apprentices, which McQueen later landed. During his training, he showed true talent and a voracious appetite for the skills needed to cut a suit, even completing his final assessment weeks before the expected due date because of his natural ability. He was always rather cheeky, as the British call it, as he was known for having a foul mouth and even claimed to stitch the phrase, quote, "I am a see you next Thursday," in one of His Royal Highness's Prince Charles's suits that he had worked on. From there, McQueen began his studies at Central St. Martin's University in London and would go on to produce his legendary and incredibly notable Jack the Ripper Stalks His Victims collection, which was noticed by the British Vogue editor Isabella Blow. Blow became both a client and advocate for McQueen, and coupled with his impressive but often disturbing and storytelling collections, he gained notoriety in the British fashion sphere, even being named the British bad boy of fashion. The French luxury conglomerate LVMH took notice of Alexander McQueen after collections like Highland Rape and The Birds, and appointed him as creative director of the haute couture house Givenchy, where McQueen spent a few years learning and working within the sumptuous world of the mega-rich and haute couture. But McQueen felt he was playing second fiddle to other designers like John Galliano, and would go on to leave Givenchy and sell his company to its rival PPR, now called Kering. His work continued to gain worldwide acclaim, with collections like Voss and Plato's Atlantis dominating headlines and fashion's consciousness for years to come. As for Amy Winehouse, who was born in 1983, she too was from London, although it was North London in the suburban Southgate. At a young age, she was exposed to jazz music by her father, and her grandmother encouraged her to attend a theater school, where she went from part-time to full-time student. At age 14, she bought her own guitar and started getting serious about music, and even went on to become the solo vocalist for Great Britain's National Youth Jazz Orchestra. At 19, she was signed by a management company after a friend passed along her demo record, and released her debut album titled Frank in 2003, which was a mixture of cover songs and songs that Winehouse had co-written. She became known for a nouveau jazz feel and for her dedication to music, instead of just singing whatever was placed in front of her, as other performers had done at that time and before that. Her second studio album was titled Back to Black and featured some of her most well-known songs, which only boosted her popularity, and went on to garner her 5 Grammy Awards in 2008. Winehouse's music wasn't the only standout quality she possessed, but her choice of dress, usually short skirts and dresses, tight tops, ballet flats, sky-high heels, and of course her signature beehive was all influenced by soul girl groups like the Ronettes. And of course, Winehouse, like McQueen, had a cutting wit and was never afraid to say how she felt about anything. In reality, these two Londoners were incredibly similar, with natural talents in their field, smart references that set them apart from their peers, and, of course, mouths that could get them in trouble. Now, where does the story of this fashion feud actually begin? Well, it was told to us by a man named Archie Reed, who was connected to both McQueen and Winehouse, that it really all started at a party. Archie Reed was a fashion stylist at the time who had known McQueen since they were both young growing up in the East End, but they reconnected in 1996. From there, they began a non-exclusive relationship, and McQueen would bring Reed around for fashionable dinners and parties, as McQueen was often uncomfortable about being there in the first place. Or at least that's what we've been told to believe. Their romance lasted 10 plus years, and in 2006, Reed attended a party on the arm of McQueen that also happened to have a then 23-year-old Amy Winehouse in attendance. Archie Reed would later go on to explain to the Daily Mail that the first meeting of McQueen and Winehouse did not go smoothly in an interview in 2011. She and Lee didn't get on. Lee had offended her at the party where I first met her, and Amy never forgave him. Now, it's not all unbelievable to hear that Alexander McQueen might have said something or done something to offend someone. There's the story of how he screamed at supermodel Naomi Campbell when she was late and backstage at one of his fashion shows saying, "F you, you're too late." His thoughts about other designers were cutting like his scissors. Speaking on Giorgio Armani, he's close to dead. I mean, no one wants to wear a floppy suit in a nice wool. The man was a bloody window dresser. What does he know? And Tom Ford even recalled that at a dinner hosted by Madonna for Elton John, McQueen had gotten very drunk and was being rather debaucherous. Madonna was seated across the table from McQueen, and he began to drunkenly throw food at her, with Reed confirming he had hit her in the head with a baked potato. Iconic, but still probably kind of bad. Which had Madonna stopped speaking to him from there on. Ford was quoted in the book Gods and Kings by Dana Thomas as believing his behavior could have been because he, quote, was nervous and he was acting out like a kid. I think he felt uncomfortable. So to hear that McQueen would have said something out of pocket to Winehouse, whether it was due to his lack of care for celebrities or out of just sheer nervousness, is hardly inconceivable. Reed has never confirmed what exactly McQueen said to Winehouse that so offended her, but it became very well known that she couldn't stand him, and even hated the sight of his name within her circle. But Reed would go on to become a friend to Winehouse, and spend time with her intimately. He would hang around when she hosted parties, and was invited to her, quote, lovely roast dinners, and even tried to help her with her drug addiction, stating, quote, at one stage, I got her a month's supply of something called Sub-2X, a medication used to wean users off of heroin. As Reed was still seeing McQueen and becoming friends with Winehouse, he was given access to both camps, and knew that McQueen eventually felt bad enough about his comments to Winehouse that he wanted to apologize. Instead of offering an in-person apology, McQueen did what many fashion brands do in general in order to get in the good graces of celebrities, usually who they have not offended. He sent her product, specifically a dress. Now, the gown that he sent her was reported to be worth £15,000, at least in 2002, or $32,000 by today's estimate, and was from a runway collection, but Reed never specified which. While I can't be certain, we can assume that McQueen would have sent the dress from a collection he had shown recently, which could have been his fall 2006 Widows of Culloden collection. And considering Amy's taste in fitted dresses in 1950s and 1960s pinup styles, maybe this halter neck dress in red with black trim and embroidery was the one, as the £15,000 price tag would reflect more in the cost to embroider such a dress rather than some of the other fitted styles in the collection. Could have also been from the spring 2007 Saraband collection, as the fitted cocktail styles with bubble hems could have also most definitely slotted in with Winehouse's style narrative. We may never know which dress it was unless Reed, later on, divulges which dress Winehouse was sent if he knew. But the dress gained notoriety because of what happened to it after it was received by Amy. Just like McQueen, Winehouse was not one to let the glitz and glam of show business dictate her behavior, and so she did something rather drastic. Instead of returning the dress to McQueen, Winehouse, at least according to Reed, quote, put it on the barbecue. I'm pretty positive that means she burnt it on a barbecue. Probably in her backyard. Icon behavior, to say the very least. In reality, it proves that Winehouse took no prisoners and was difficult to woo once she was crossed. But that wasn't the only time she would go on to have her way with an Alexander McQueen dress. According to Reed, at the London department store Selfridges, Winehouse couldn't bear to even see the name McQueen, as it enraged her, or at least one can suspect from what happened next. According to Reed, quote, she also spat on one of his dresses at Selfridges, which she had to pay for because she had soiled it. At first she refused, then she just said, quote, fine, but tell Alexander McQueen I ruined his dress, end quote. To be honest, Winehouse's response to McQueen, again, legendary behavior, as we don't often hear about people getting one over on Alexander McQueen. It also proves that Winehouse knew how to deliver a message, and she wanted to make sure that that message was received loud and clear. There were reports a few years later that Winehouse donated some Alexander McQueen pieces to a charity shop. which might mean the two made up or that Winehouse became a client of McQueen eventually, but those theories are hard to confirm. And I'm pretty positive there's no actual evidence of Amy Winehouse wearing any McQueen in any photograph sort of styles, or if there is, there are very few. Honestly, we're never really gonna know if Amy became a McQueen wearer, or if Alexander McQueen was a big fan of Back to Black. Now, while this is a series about fashion feuds, the saddest part is we just genuinely don't know if these two ever got to make up before their untimely passings. Yes, the drama is great and spicy, somewhat missing from today's fashion landscape, which makes it kind of boring. The way that these talented two went out is incredibly sad. Both Alexander McQueen and Amy Winehouse suffered substance abuse and addiction issues, and both felt the pressures of their work and the heartache in their personal lives so strongly, it led to both of them passing away in their primes. These two British legends, who will go down in history as pioneers and true craftspeople in their respective work, died within just a year and a half of each other. Alexander McQueen took his own life on February 11th, 2010, after the passing of his deeply beloved mother Joyce in his home in London. His suicidal thoughts culminated with the death of his mother, the suicide of his friend and mentor Isabella Blow, and the sickness of his dog, which were all too much for him, and he unfortunately died at home. The fashion world mourned for the loss of one of its truest creatives, and his friends and family were deeply saddened to learn that he had taken his own life. As for Amy Winehouse, she passed on July 23, 2011, at the tender age of 27, after having difficulty with substance abuse. Around 3 years before her death, she had quit using hard drugs, but found difficulty coming off of alcohol. She died of alcohol poisoning at her home, and it was labeled an accidental death by the coroner, and the world reeled from the young star's death. The music industry paid tribute to the talented starlet who had shone brightly and truly, and her family put together a charity in order to help other young people with addiction issues. The death of these two within such close proximity only becomes another thing that tragically ties them together. The fashion feud of Alexander McQueen and Amy Winehouse is one that is less common, as celebrities and fashion designers don't often go blow to blow with each other, as it diametrically opposes the usual relationship of designer and muse. Amy Winehouse and Alexander McQueen were two people that rejected conventionality. While their feud is and should be seen as legendary, in this instance, I personally wish that the common ground that they had would have brought them together for iconic fashion moments and a genuine connection rather than for rude comments and the burning of a dress. But alas, that's what Fashion Feuds is all about. So thank you guys all so much for watching this inaugural episode of Fashion Feuds. There will be more, please don't worry. But if you have any feuds that you would like to be explored in the future, please let us know in the comments down below. I hope you guys enjoyed. Remember, click subscribe, click like, comments, thoughts, opinions, critiques, I'll take them all. I will see you guys on the next video, and TTYL.